The 18 Strong Podcast with Jeff Pellizzaro, episode number 54.
Welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast, where you get direct access to the world's greatest experts on training harder, practicing smarter, and playing better golf. Now, here's your host, Jeff Pellizzaro.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Jeff Pellizzaro, physical therapist and golf fitness professional. I want to welcome you to the 18 Strong Podcast, and for all of you ASU Sun Devil fans that have stumbled across this podcast simply because of Coach Tim Mickelson, I want to welcome you to 18 Strong and encourage you to go over to 18strong.com and check out all the other podcasts, videos, our YouTube channel, and everything that we have for you. We've got a ton of resources. Tons of episodes of the podcast with great guests talking everything on fitness, nutrition, mental game, all that good stuff. And then we've got a ton of videos over on 18 Strong on YouTube, just some different exercises and things to help make your game better, make you better, and allow you to finish 18 Strong every time you go out on the course. I'm extremely excited about this episode where we get to talk to Tim Mickelson, the head coach of ASU, the Sun Devils, and just happens to be the younger brother of Phil Mickelson, obviously world-class Hall of Fame golfer. But we really discuss on this episode the game of college golf and what is a college coach, top 25, really this upcoming season, a top 10 team, looking for in some of these recruits. What does the college life look like for these guys regarding playing, practicing, working out? And then what are some of Tim's tips for you, the grinder, the guy out there working hard at his job but loving the game, wanting to make your fitness life better, your golf game better? What are the things that you can take away from what these guys are doing in order to make your game as strong as possible? I got to give a quick shout out to my buddy Jimmy Yoon from Warrior Restoration. If you guys listened to last week's episode, which was episode 53 of the podcast, Jimmy was on, a world-class chiropractor that works with a ton of golfers and athletes. But Jimmy is actually the one that allowed us to get Tim on the line for this week's call. He sent me a message, said, "Hey, I know Tim Mickelson. I think it'd be great for you to get him on the podcast. I'll set it up if you would like to." And I was like, yeah, of course. Let's get him on. So want to thank Jimmy. Obviously want to thank Tim for coming on. I know he's a busy guy, getting the guys ready for the season and everything. So thanks to both of you guys. I know you guys are really going to enjoy this episode. We got a ton of information in here. We did have a little bit of trouble with some of the recordings and had a computer crash and all that kind of stuff. So we actually lost some of the audio from this interview, and Tim was awesome enough to get back on the line a couple days later to help me put this together and get this out for you. So again, very appreciative of Tim and how generous he was of his time to allow us to get this out for this week's episode. So thank you, Tim. Thank you guys for listening. I'll catch you up on the other side. Hey, Tim, thanks for coming on, and welcome to the 18 Strong Podcast.
My pleasure to be on, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So give us a little idea. Obviously, we know you're Phil's brother, and you're the head coach of ASU. Let's get a little background on you and your playing career and what it was like growing up in the Mickelson household.
Growing up in the Mickelson household would be no different than the household you grew up in, probably, because the age gap between my brother and I is large enough that he wasn't really a TV icon or anything like that until he was well out of the house, and I was out of the house even. So, he was just a typical brother, and we basically played games around the house, but the competition was not all that fierce because he was so much bigger than me, being 7 years older. So growing up was as normal as you can imagine. But my background, from high school, I went to Arizona State, played there for a couple of years. From there, I actually transferred and played for Oregon State just because I wasn't able to get in the lineup enough at ASU. Turned pro, played on the what's called the Hooters Tour for a year. Went to the PGA Tour qualifying school. Got to the second stage of 3 stages and failed at second stage and just got really burnt out and decided I was going to take a couple months away from competitive golf. And the day I got home, I basically talked to my buddy who was the head coach at San Diego State and just asked if I could help out and basically just help out for a couple months on a volunteer basis, and that's precisely what I did. And after those couple months, I sort of liked it, and he offered me the paid assistant position. I figured I'd try it for a little bit, and then year later, the head coaching job at USD opened up, and I still wasn't ready to go play. And 12 years later, I'm head coach at Arizona State, starting my 5th year.
Awesome. And was coming back to ASU, was that kind of in the plans when you got into the coaching gig and you started to see that this was a career path that you really enjoyed and wanted to continue with? Was it kind of a goal of yours to get back to ASU, or did that just kind of work out the way that it worked out?
Well, once I got into coaching and had been at San Diego State and then University of San Diego for a couple of years, once I'd been at USD for a couple of years, I started thinking, okay, this is probably what I want to do for the rest of my life. And, if I'm not going to be at San Diego, where would I like to be? And really the only school that kept coming up in my mind was, God, it'd be really cool to go back to Arizona State and try to win a national championship. It's got the facilities, and I certainly know about the tradition and the weather and obviously the golf course and everything we have. And so, it was never my goal to become the head coach at Arizona State, but I did feel like whenever it opened up, that I would certainly at least take a look at that position. And it was really the only other school besides USD that I was interested in, and I was lucky enough a few years ago that it happened.
So how long have you been there now?
I just completed my 4th year, so just starting my 5th.
And I know that the team has progressed pretty well since you've gotten there. Give us a little idea of where you are and who you have coming back and what's going on with the team.
Yeah, we've come a long way in the 4 years. At the end of my 1st year, we were about 85th in the country, which really is not acceptable for ASU. It was just sort of a situation we were in. But after last year, we finished the season number 11 in the country. We were as high as number 2 during the spring. Ended up playing probably most of the spring at number 3, and just played poorly at the national championship. But the good news is we pretty much have the entire starting lineup returning, plus our number 6 man. So our top 6 players from last year are returning to play again this year, in addition to a very strong transfer that we have from played at University of Idaho the last 2 years, which is not really a golf powerhouse, but they had a very good team last year, and this kid averaged 69.64 for the year, which I believe is probably only happened about 20 times in the course of college golf where a player has averaged under 70 for the entire year. We actually had 2 of those last year as well. So this year we've got 3 guys on our roster that averaged below 70 for the entire year, which is phenomenal. That's
incredible. So give us an idea. I know a lot of the guys listening are interested in the college game. It's a lot different than, the pro golf that we see on TV every weekend. First of all, how good, just bare minimum golf-wise, does a player need to be, first just to play some D1 golf, but then let's kind of segment that to, top 25 school D1 golf?
Yeah, so, it's going to be different whether you have a boy or a girl, but on the boys' side, if you want to play lower-end Division I golf, there's some programs out there that aren't very strong, but certainly still offer golf and offer scholarships. And I would say the bottom end of D1, you could be probably a 6, 7, or even 8 handicap on the men's side. Now, you're going to have to find the right school. On the women's side, you could probably be a 9, 10, 11, 12 handicap to still find a scholarship, again, on the lower end of Division I. But if you want to be a top 25 program-type player, you've got to be about a +2 or +3 handicap. And not only do you have to be a +2 or +3, you have to be at that level pretty much at the end of your junior year of high school, because that's when we're recruiting the kids and that's when we're offering scholarships. So, basically the kids that I'm looking out for our team in the next few years, by the end of their junior year, they already have to be at a level at about a +2 or +3 handicap, and they have to have had some success at the national or regional level. Otherwise, we don't know if that handicap is legit or not, because in the U.S. you can actually, you can record any round of golf and that counts towards a handicap, where other places around the world, the only way you can actually create a handicap is by actually playing in tournaments. So there's different ways to look at handicaps here versus the rest of the world.
Gotcha. So do you have a suggestion? There's a lot of talk these days about getting into specifics of just playing one sport or, really specializing in a certain sport. At what age do you think some of these kids, at least in your experience, the ones that you're seeing have the most success, what age do they start to really kind of specialize in golf being their only sport?
Well, it's funny. I actually got asked this question yesterday, and my response yesterday was going to be the exact same as now, which is, if a kid plays a second or third sport, if it is a team sport, I have no problems with having that kid play that sport all the way up until he becomes a freshman on my team in college, because I think it's important that they understand what it means to play a team sport and what it's all about, because golf is obviously an individual sport, but in college it's a team sport. Now, if that other sport is individual like tennis, then, I would probably say, probably his junior year of high school, but, after his sophomore year is when he should probably give it up and focus on golf. Along the same lines, if the kid is a late bloomer, where he didn't start playing golf until he was 12 or 13 and just now started to play in tournaments, he should probably focus his last couple of years of high school on just that one sport, being golf, if he wants to play it at the next level.
And do you see any correlation between the kids that have played a lot of different sports? There's a lot of talk these days about, the more athletic golfers and the kids that play a lot of sports, like a Jordan Spieth, or, you look at some of these other guys out on tour that have played a lot of different sports growing up. Do you see that trend where some of the better athletes tend to become some of the better golfers?
I think you're starting to see that more and more often now. In the past, you basically played golf if you couldn't play anything else. Now, because of the success of golf, and certainly, give the credit to Tiger, because he pretty much, blew it all up for this next generation. But, certainly there's so much hand-eye coordination in golf that, playing other sports, I think is important. And I think especially, again, from that team aspect. But lastly, I think it's also very important when it comes to just from competitive nature, being so competitive. If you only play golf, you obviously you sort of get used to losing, because you don't win all that much in golf. Whereas in other sports, it's basically 50% of the time you either win or you lose. And so I think to have that competitive fire to want to win every single time, I think that's another positive you can take out of team sports.
Sure. All right. So you gave us a little idea of how good these guys need to be as far as their play, handicap level. What are some of the other, both on-course and off-course qualities that you look for in a high school kid that you're recruiting or looking to possibly recruit that's, kind of gives you the, yes, we're going to continue to look at him, or maybe not. There's a couple things there that we don't really want to bring to our team.
Yeah, on-course types of things you might be looking at is how a player reacts after a bad shot or bad swing. Does he let his emotions get the most of them, or does he just put his club back in his bag and go to the next shot, prepare to hit that? Things like, is his shirt tucked in? Is his hat worn, straight forward? How does he communicate with the other players in his group? Does he socialize, or is he very quiet? If it's an event where there's a coach, does he talk to the coach? Does he respect his advice? Things like that. And then off the course, we're always looking for really good students who have the ability to also get academic aid coupled on top of the athletic aid we're able to give them. And we're also always looking for leaders, and certainly kids that stay out of trouble and are positive role models, because once they start at a university and represent a university, they're playing for a much larger thing than just themselves. They're obviously representing the entire program and the athletic department in that entire school. So there's a lot of things that go into as different factors as to who we may or may not recruit.
All right, I had a question from one of my clients who knew I was going to be interviewing you, and he said, he had a son who didn't really play college golf, but was a golfer back in the day, and so he's like, something I would like to ask Tim would be, what about the parents? Do the parents ever play a role in your decision? I know every college sport, you run into the overbearing parent, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Is that something that ever plays a factor into your decision?
Unfortunately, sometimes it does. My belief is that I'm going to be coaching the kid, the player, for 4 years. So the bulk of my communication has to be with him, because that's who I'm going to be spending my time around. And it's also a great opportunity to put a kid in a position where he may have to talk to somebody that he's nervous to talk to, he's intimidated by. So we're giving them great opportunities in furthering their education for life if they take the initiative. I would say that the one time you have to have a conversation with the parents is certainly from the financial side, because that's the important side that the parents are going to pay for. If there is a financial piece that they have to pay for, so making sure they know exactly what the parameters are for a scholarship and how to renew it and what's going to be out of pocket, things like that. But there have been cases, and I've had one myself, where a parent's terrible reputation precedes him, and I basically decided not to recruit a player because I felt like that parent was so overbearing and was going to be so involved that I would not want to deal with that on a daily basis for 4 years.
Golf is such an individualized sport, and I think it's such a good point to make that these kids have to learn to become gentlemen and kind of speak for themselves on the course. And if they've got a parent that's been kind of making decisions all the time for them or doing everything for them, it makes it a lot harder for them to then transition. So all of you parents out there that are listening, this is a coach at a Division I school, so just beware how involved you are with your golfer, and let the golfer, let the college athlete do what they need to do and become the young gentleman that they need to become to become the player that they want to be. So great advice from you there, Tim.
Exactly. And the whole point is that we're trying to prepare them for life after college. And if parents, continue to shelter the kid so much the kid doesn't know how to handle a tough situation, then, we're not doing them justice for what happens to them when they're 20 to 50. So the earlier we can get kids into the comfort zone of having those difficult conversations, because let's be honest, with this generation, it's so easy to hide your emotions and just get on a cell phone and text somebody, and things like that. But that doesn't work in the real world when it comes to business and things like that. So let's get the kids as mature and as educated as possible.
Excellent. All right, I'd like to dive a little bit into the fitness side of things. What does the workout program and the fitness routine look like for a program like ASU?
Yeah, we're doing very golf-specific workouts right now. So the one thing we're not really doing is for any middle-aged person out there who loves to go to the gym, when you see that barbell so you can go do the bench press or something like that, or squats, we're basically not touching that at all. So we are not doing anything when it comes to bench press. We're not doing anything when it comes to squats with a barbell, at least. We will do squats and lunges, but we're not going to be putting 200, 250 pounds, on our neck. So we want to obviously prevent injuries, not cause them. And so, next time somebody goes in the gym, they should look at that barbell, and if they want to play golf, maybe reconsider whether or not they need to go do that bench press or heavy squats.
Right. Very nice. Yeah, and I know that when you go into a gym and you're a golfer, especially like you mentioned, the middle-aged golfer, the first principle is don't get hurt. So
Correct.
Figure out what your body needs. And I love that you talked about the assessments that you guys go through, because we preach that all the time, that you need to know what you need to work on first. Yep. In order to then fix some things, and then have somebody help you design a quality program so you don't hurt yourself, because it's not about going in and throwing medicine balls and gaining all this speed and rotation if your ankles don't work or you
Yep.
can't rotate at your hip. You need to work on some of the more basic fundamental things. So I think that's a great point to point out to the listeners. If you could give us a little idea of what does your practice schedule look like? Give us an idea of the life of the college golfer, and what do your practices entail? Because you mentioned it's not a lot of technical swing-related stuff. So what kind of drills and things do you have these guys working on?
All right, so this is going to take a few minutes, so just rest up.
We're ready for it.
We, a general week, we're going to put in roughly 20 hours when it comes to golf-related activities. And 20 hours is the maximum that I'm allowed to force my athletes into doing. So that includes golf, team meetings, as well as workouts. So on a general week, on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, we're basically going to have the guys go to class in the morning. They're going to get out around 11 or 12 o'clock. They're going to grab something to eat. They're going to show up to either the golf course. Well, basically play. So we're going to go play 18 holes on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. When they're done, they're going to come back, they're going to grab something to eat, and usually go straight to their house to study or go to study hall and get a couple hours in. On Wednesdays and Fridays, the morning routine is fairly the same. Guys are going to go to class if they have class. They're going to go eat, and then at 1 o'clock, they're going to show up to our facility, and we're going to practice for 2 hours. After we practice, the guys are going to rest for about 30, 45 minutes, and that's when we do our workouts. Mm-hmm. We do our workouts after we practice for one main reason. Muscles, obviously, you'll know this better than me, but muscles need time to basically recover after a workout. I believe the worst thing we could do is go work out, build our muscles, have those muscle fibers breaking down and all that, and then immediately go work out. We're not training our body to perform while they're basically in their peak mode. And so we basically don't really want our guys to practice within 3 or 4 hours of when we finish a workout. So we feel like if we can do it after we're all done Wednesday, Friday, it's perfect. They can basically go recover with a protein shake and then, finish off their day. Usually we'll give our athletes Saturday and Sundays off to basically do what they want. If they want to go practice or play, they can. But they've got a couple days off just to recover and, relax after a long week. When we practice on Wednesdays and Fridays, it's basically coaches are there to monitor and supervise again and make sure that our guys are doing the things they need to get better. As a golfer, we always want to work on what we do well because it's more fun and it's more of like positive reinforcement when we actually watch ourselves hit a good shot. But the way we get better in golf is to actually practice the things we do poorly. And so what I will do as a coach is watch our guys. And if there's somebody who all he does is hit balls on the range, we're going to at some point have to go up to him and say, look, we need you to go to the chipping green and do this drill. We need you to go to the putting green and do this drill. And so we'll do that basically on Wednesdays and Fridays. And on Friday, we'll do a lot of short game specific stuff. So we'll give specific putting drills for everybody to complete. And at the end of practice, we'll have some sort of game. We'll have a grand champion and we'll have a big loser. And the big loser usually has to do something like 20 burpees or something like that.
Right.
Grand champion, there's really nothing special that he gets except for being able to brag for the next week.
I love it. So then do you guys work a lot or talk a lot about, just thinking out on the course and how to manage different situations and things like that?
Well, certainly the mental game and course strategy and course preparation is basically where the coaching staff does a lot of work. And so we're very involved when it comes to preparing for a tournament during the practice round, and we'll obviously do all the lasering, all the numbers, and figuring out ways that we should basically be able to go about a golf course to be successful. And we also are lucky that we have one of the best sports psychologists in the country that work with our players. So it's one thing for me to go tell our player, about a pre-shot routine and how to breathe. But when you have somebody who's taught the best player in the world for 10 years, that comes with, a resume that I don't have.
Right.
He may say the exact same words, but it obviously means a lot more coming from him. And so we're very lucky to have somebody that comes in a couple times a semester to work with our players.
Can you drop the name?
Yeah, his name is Dr. Jay Brunza. He lives out in San Diego. He works with about, I think, 3 programs right now. And he worked with Tiger for a long time when he was a junior, as well as his first couple of years as a pro, I believe.
Awesome. I got a question for you. This is one personally. I was playing, last year. Went down to a club that my dad belongs to, and I was like, oh, you know what? I think I'll go get one of those yardage books because I'm going to play it a couple of times. I get a yardage book, and then I'm like, wait, I don't know how to use this thing. So give us a brief synopsis of when you have a yardage book, how do you use it?
An easy way to look at it, I guess, is a yardage book to golfers is the same as a calculator to a mathematician. So any golfer can look at a yardage book and basically understand the numbers pretty easily. And what it basically is going to do is it's going to tell you off the tee box how far it is to carry a certain bunker, or if it's a dogleg right, how far is it if you were to hit the ball dead straight until you go through the fairway. And then once you get into the fairway, there's going to be a lot of numbers, usually right next to each other, and one's going to stand for the front edge of the green, and the other is going to stand for the center of the green. And then when you get to the green, there's going to be all sorts of diagrams and angles and things like that, and that's basically just showing the land map of the green itself. Therefore, you can look at it and know, based on where you are and where the hole is, a general direction the ball should break, whether it's left to right, right to left, uphill or downhill.
And then, so let's say, I'm playing one day. I know I'm going to play the same course the next day. Are there any tips for, taking specific notes, or how would you kind of manage that?
Well, there's a couple easy things you can do. You could mark which tee box you actually play from. You could also mark, in your yardage book, write down the club you hit. Because if it's a tournament, it's very possible that they're going to change the actual tee boxes that you use. And so if you know what you hit from this tee box, that can help determine what you should hit, the next day if you're at a different tee box, or even if just the wind is different. I mean, a hole can play vastly different if it's downwind one day and into the wind the next. So that's where yardage book's going to come into big play, as well as on par threes. You're going to be able to know what club you hit the day before and the direction of the wind and all that sort of stuff.
Gotcha. Okay, I took us a little off topic there, but I've had that question for a while, so I had to figure this was the perfect opportunity. All right, with the team sport, college golf being a team sport, and but having so many different individuals, what are some of the hallmarks of ASU's program and what you guys are trying to instill in these young men that the golfers listening to this show can also kind of take out of this and utilize in their own golf game?
Yeah, no, our guys are going to be a little bit different than the average player that's going to be listening to this.
Right.
In that our players, every single one that comes to our school to play golf has aspirations to play on the PGA Tour, and about half of them want to become the best player in the world. And so their goals are going to be different. But we can go about things the same way, whether we're a 20 handicap or a +5. And that is, our philosophy is we want to try to get 1% better every day. And so when you go to the golf course to practice, don't go just to practice. Go with a purpose. Show up knowing what you need to practice and actually do it. And if you're going to have a drill, a putting drill, actually commit to finishing it. Don't just, I tried it for 20 minutes and it didn't work, so, I have to go now. You got to commit, challenge yourself, commit to it, and complete it. And it's going to give you a great sense of accomplishment, and it's going to give you a lot more confidence when you actually play golf the next time. And so our guys, for the most part, every day they show up, they have a goal in mind of how they're going to get just a little bit better on that day.
Are there any suggestions of trends that you've seen as far as, what are some of the most important areas for somebody who's a little bit strapped on time? Most of us from the 18 Strong podcast are either working professionals, guys that are playing on the weekend, have kids.
Yeah.
Where would you suggest them spending most of their time? Obviously, being a fitness podcast, we don't have to talk about the fitness side of it, but from a practicing standpoint.
Well, from a practice standpoint, it's no different than the actual statistics, for professional golfers, which is simple. 80% of your shots that you practice should be probably within 120 yards and in, because that's roughly the percentage of shots you're going to take on a golf course. So, we all like to go to the range and beat driver, but you're going to hit driver maybe 10 times in a round. You're going to be putting probably 35 times around. You're going to be hitting your L wedge because you're going to miss greens 15 to 20 times because you hopefully have some wedges into greens, but you're going to miss a green or two. So, focus on the areas that are going to benefit you the most. What I notice personally, because I don't get to play very much anymore, I play maybe every 2 weeks, my full swing is still pretty much the same. But where I struggle after not practicing for a while is the finesse shots, the three-quarter shots, as well as the chipping and putting. All the feel shots, those are going to be the first shots that get away from you. So if you're going to be a weekend golfer, I would just recommend, instead of going to the driving range and actually spending $12 to hit a bucket of balls, go to the putting green, go to the chipping green for free, and just goof off and spend some time getting the feel down again, and then challenge yourself with the putting drill. And once you complete it, you can go back home. Yeah,
it seems to me like we all tend to practice backwards. We seem to want to go and hit the big sticks instead of practicing that finesse stuff.
Yep.
A question that I had before and I didn't get to was when we were talking about the recruits and bringing these guys into your program, are there any commonalities that you see as far as the developmental process and athletic ability and things of the kids that are basically your best performers, what they've done in their past to prepare to get to the college ranks?
I think the one thing I've noticed is that the best players that I've coached over the last 10 years, the one thing they all have is they have the mental game down. They have the self-belief in their game. They know that when they go onto the golf course that they have a better chance to beat you than that person has to beat, him. And so they show up and they have the extra confidence. They have that self-belief, and it's not easy to teach that. But it's an intangible that the best players I've coached have. And if you transition that to the professionals, you got to believe that guys like Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy and Jordan Spieth and my brother and Adam Scott, they show up expecting to win. And that's exactly what the best junior players in the country have, the best college players, and they all transition that hopefully into the pros as well.
Gotcha. Okay, this kind of feeds directly into perfectly the next question, and I kind of sent you this ahead of time. 18 Strong is the name of the podcast, and it's about finishing 18 holes of golf, or in many cases 36 holes, 54 holes, 72 holes, as good on the last hole as you started the first hole. Do you have a good story of either yourself or a player that you've had that exhibits 18 Strong to what your definition would be?
I don't have a player in mind that exemplifies that more so than others, but our belief has always been that we have to stay physically fit, because as soon as we lose it mentally, we're going to lose it physically, and vice versa. As soon as we lose it physically, we're going to lose it mentally on the course. So let's stay as physically fit as we can, which means a couple things. When we're on the course, we're not drinking Coke, Diet Coke, anything with sugar, unless it's got electrolytes in it, maybe watered down Gatorade. We're not eating Snickers bars, things like that. We're not giving anything to give us the caffeine rush and low spot, or the basically sugar rush and then the crash. And so we're eating a lot of things like nuts and things like that to keep us even keel, so we have the best chance to get to that 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th hole with a lot of energy and still in it mentally. The crazy part about college golf is we generally will play 72 holes of golf over a 48-hour period.
Whoa.
Because we usually play a practice round on, let's say, on a Sunday afternoon. We're going to play 36 holes on Monday, and then we play early Tuesday morning. So over 48 hours, we're playing 4 rounds of golf. And so it's very easy to lose it mentally, and as soon as you lose it mentally, your game's going everywhere. And so that's why the nutrition on the course is very, very important.
Awesome. All right, just a couple closing questions for you before we wrap everything up here.
All right.
One of my favorite questions for every guest is, are you a Caddyshack or Happy Gilmore fan?
Oh, God, I love both.
I know, right?
You got to
pick one, though.
If I have to pick one, I'm a traditionalist, so I got to go with Caddyshack.
Awesome. All right, and what has you most excited about your upcoming season and just the program in general right now?
I think we're in a great spot. We had a really good year last year, and we basically bring back our top 6 players, and we actually have just added another player who averaged 69.6 for the entire season last year at his prior school. So we have 3 players this year that averaged below 70 last year in college golf. So I think from a 1-2-3 punch, I think we've got the best 1-2-3 punch in the country, and I'm very confident in the players we have behind those 3 as well. That the sky's the limit for us this year, and I'm going to enjoy the ride.
Wow. All right. Now, at the beginning of the podcast, I know you said that Phil's 7 years older than you, and there's not. He
still is.
Yeah, there's not that much, or there wasn't that much rivalry growing up. But now you're both grown men, and I know you go out and play together every now and then. Give me a story when you got the best of Phil on the golf course.
Well, there's certainly been a few. Back when I was about 24 to 28, I was playing more. I would get him probably once out of every 4 times we would play. But what I always know about Phil, or what I've learned to know about Phil, is this. The best way to beat him is when he doesn't know that he's getting beat. And all I mean is, if he knows that he's 2 down with 3 to go, he's going to either rattle off a couple birdies or he's going to get in my head somehow.
Right.
So
as a big brother always does.
Exactly. So I try to go about my business and hope that I've built a big enough lead that he didn't know it until it was too late. But there was this one time I was 10 under through 12 holes at this course in San Diego called the Grand. And Phil had the course record at 9 under. And I had a couple pretty easy holes coming down the stretch, too. 16 is a definite reachable par 5. 15 is a pretty easy par 4, as is 14. And he looked at the scorecard and goes, dude, you're 10 under through 12 holes. I go, I know. It's amazing. He goes, you know my course record's 9 under, right? I'm like, yeah. He goes, do you think you're going to beat it? I said, well, I like my chances. Instead of focusing on the easy holes, he goes, well, what's going to happen on 13? It's dead into the wind. You got the canyon to the right, 17 and 204. So he starts having me think about all the difficult shots. And Sure enough, I shot 8 under.
Oh, no way.
Got in my head, and he kept his course record.
That's a veteran move.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
Definitely. All right. Any last pieces of advice for the 18 Strong listeners out there before we cut it off?
My one piece of advice is for the middle-aged golfer, make sure you enjoy it. And if you have a kid out there, make sure that he plays for fun. Don't force him to go play. Let him be the one to tell you when he wants to go play, and have it be so that he never has to spend so much time at the golf course that he doesn't want to come back. You want to take him away from the golf course with, in his own mind, thinking, God, I can't wait to do this again. So have him always wanting a little bit more, and that'll make it that much more enjoyable for the dads to be able to take their kids out and enjoy the game of golf.
That's such great advice. Well, Tim, I can't thank you enough for your time tonight, and we wish you guys the best this year and the years in the future. And I know the 18 Strong podcast listeners are going to be rooting for the Sun Devils this year. So once again, thanks for coming on.
You got it, Jeff. Thanks for having me, and go Devils.
You got it. All right. I know there was a ton of information in there for you, so I hope you really enjoyed this episode. I want to thank Tim again for being so kind and generous with his time and coming on and giving us such an in-depth look at their program, what they're looking for in these kids. And I just love the fact, one of the big takeaways for me is the fact that he is looking for individuals that are looking to better themselves and represent themselves well. And a big goal of their program is to help turn these golfers into respectable young men. It's not simply about the game of golf. It's also about the tradition of golf, the tradition of ASU, and those guys representing their brand very well. And I think that's a very important piece of a good coach and what they're doing, and a big reason why this team continues to get more successful and are getting higher recruits year in and year out. So ASU Sun Devil fans, hopefully you'll join us for some more 18 Strong podcast episodes. We wish you guys the best, wish the team the best this season, and look forward to seeing more success for the Sun Devils as the years play out. If you want any more information on the show, be sure to go over to 18strong.com. If you could do us a huge favor, leave us a review on iTunes simply by going to iTunes and clicking the ratings and reviews button, and it'll allow you to leave a review. It's a great way to help us get the show out there. And, of course, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on all those places. Check us out, share the message, train hard, practice smart, play better golf. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the 18 Strong podcast at www.18strong.com. And remember, train hard, practice smart, and play better golf.